Hey everyone, Jacob Slade from SteamFirst.com back again, and today I'm reviewing Procyon, available, of course, for Steam. It's a shoot-'em-up, a 2D shoot-'em-up, which is a genre not particularly strong on Steam. There's not a lot of 2D shoot-'em-ups on Steam, though the trend seems to be the ones that are on Steam are generally pretty good. Procyon is exactly that. Pretty good. It's got very fun, fast-paced gameplay that I love, and it also has very, very good controls. However, as with many indie games like this that are from small development studios that don't have a lot of time, don't have a lot of resources available to them, it fails to really impress, and it really doesn't do anything special. But I did enjoy it. It was a good time. The gameplay is pretty challenging, which I actually think is a good thing, because shoot-'em-ups have a history of being very challenging. Now, this is not even close to the hardest shoot-'em-up you'll ever play, but it is decently challenging. There's not a ton of stuff on screen at once, but again, decently challenging. The gameplay is fun. I really did have fun playing it for a little while at a time, playing it in short, like 20-minute bursts. But it does get boring pretty fast because there's just nothing special about the game. It is fast-paced. There's always enemies on screen at pretty much all times, though there's not a lot of them on screen at all times. There are different attacks you have, but there's no like power-ups or bonus points or anything like that. There are bosses, but the bosses are actually really easy compared to the regular levels themselves, which I found weird. The difficulty is just unbalanced. It's kind of mismatched, but again, it's nice to see that at least the challenge is there. The game also has decent humor. I was surprised because I did not know that this game would try to be funny at all. But as I launched the game, there's a nice little cutscene in the beginning to give you some backstory, though of course there's not a lot of story involved. But the narrator and the script is pretty, like, I chuckled. It's not the funniest thing, but it's decent. Everything about this game seems to be decent. That's what I'm getting at. It's overly basic. It really gets boring after playing more than 2 levels at a time, just because nothing new ever happens. Sure, there's harder enemies, and the levels in general get more difficult. Maybe they get a little longer, but it's always consistently boring after 1 or 2 levels. You play 1 or 2 levels and you stop, then you might have a good time. But if you try and play more than that, it's going to get boring really fast. Again, there's no power-ups, which is really disappointing considering it's a shmups. I love power-ups in any game, especially shmups. There's no things you can collect for bonus points. There's no collectibles. There's the boss fights, again, far too easy to add any variety to the game. The soundtrack and graphics are the final thing that are really, I thought these would help the game. Unfortunately, they didn't. The soundtrack and graphics are both really cheesy. It seems like, honestly, I feel like the soundtrack was like ripped from a movie. Obviously wasn't. I don't think it was. There would probably be a lawsuit against them, but it's that cheesy. It's just like you've heard this soundtrack everywhere before in every like cheap action movie ever. The graphics are also sloppy, low in terms of technical graphics. There's nothing there. You can run this at, I believe I checked the frame rate and it was running at around 650 frames per second, to give you an idea of the technical aspect of the graphics. This is not a very technically impressive game, nor is it artistically. There's not a lot going on in this game at all. And unfortunately, Procyon is another indie game that had a lot of potential, and I'm going to assume it was due to the lack of resources and the fact that it is a small indie title. It doesn't feel finished. It couldn't really flesh out any of the ideas that it had. It's way too basic. It's way too boring. It could have been a very good game. The controls I really liked. They were super sensitive. Every time you even just barely nudged, the analog stick on the Xbox 360 controller, which is what I used to play. I'm not even sure if this game has keyboard support, honestly, because when I first booted it up, I did not have my controller plugged in, but it said press the start button. So I plugged in my controller and assumed it only works with controller. I really don't know. The controls were actually very good, though. They were very easy, and they were also extremely responsive. I was actually impressed with how responsive they were. Really just tap the analog stick and it moved. And that's good, especially in a game where you're constantly dodging bullets. Again, the fundamentals are there, as with many of the indie games I've reviewed in the past few weeks, but nothing is really standout at all. It gets boring quickly, but it was a good attempt. I'll give it that. Procyon is not exactly a game you should go hunt down and save your allowance for, but I guess if you have a little extra cash in your Steam wallet, it's worth a try if you really, really like shmups and you have nothing to play at all. Otherwise, I'm sorry, but I cannot recommend this game. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. If you enjoyed this review, a link to my channel, as well as all my other social media and stuff, is in the description of the video. And of course, subscribe to the Steam First YouTube channel as well. I'll see you later.